No! Hello and welcome. I'm super excited about our topic today. We get to look at Driver's License by Olivia Rodrigo. I think the song is really awesome. It's really impactful. I actually heard a cover of this song by someone else that I didn't really like very much. And so I was trying to figure out like why that reason was. And I think by the time we get finished here today, we'll have a little bit more information on that. So let's go ahead and dive right on into this. I'm Dr. Zach. Grab a cup of tea and join me. Have the ukulele again here today, just so we can get some kind of context. So we have like the got my driver's license last week. All right, here we go, song time. So this first part here, rhythm is all right. I got my driver's license last week, right? It's just right at the end, we kind of break that rhythm of the words. Right now, I'm just talking about the rhythm of the words rather than the music. And typically, unless I specifically state so, I'll be talking about the rhythm of the words. Where's the strong and the weak parts of the line, since this is a lyric analysis. We have this license last week. We have that strong, weak, weak, strong right here. And so we have two weak beats there, which kind of breaks that up. Overall, there's not a whole lot of consistency with the rhythm in the verses. In the chorus, it's another thing entirely. But for the verses, there's not really much to talk about, so we're going to skip most of that. So instead, let's look at the rhymes. Well, we have week and me. We're rhyming that E vowel from those two. So we have our first rhyme there. And then we have house and about. There's our second rhyme. So we have these kind of every other line rhymes. And then we have suburbs, which doesn't rhyme with anything. And then we have around, which doesn't really rhyme with anything. So that is, a little strange, but we can see if there's maybe a pattern here, right? So far we have every other line, and then the last two lines don't rhyme with anything, okay? That's the established pattern. Some other kind of comments about this. I like how we have drive and drove. So you get kind of both versions of that verb based on the time period, right? So that's kind of like pretty impactful, I think. And then as far as like how this is set to the music goes, I got my driver's license last week. So we have those kind of emphasis on the first syllable of those. And that really works with how like the tempo of the song is. I think the most clear example of this is when it says, "'cause you were so excited for me," "'cause you were so excited for me." If we had that in like a really fast tempo, "'cause you were so excited for me," right? It's like, it's difficult to get out. But when you have it in the slower tempo, "'cause you were so excited for me," right? We can make that rhythm work really well. Final thing I wanted to mention, this is just kind of like an aside more than anything about the actual verse. What about the time frame? So it says, I got my driver's license last week. Well, what if we said something more like yesterday? Because that would actually help the rhythm of this first line. I got my driver's license yesterday, right? Or you could even just trail yesterday off, yesterday. So that would really help strengthen the rhythm of that first line, but then it would ruin our week and me rhyme that comes later. So my solution for this is you could do something like, I got my driver's license yesterday, just like we always talked about, 'cause you were so excited to say. So we can use say for the rhyme with yesterday, to say, come on and drive up to my house, right? And then we'd have to change the next line to make that kind of work. But we could make it work that way. And I'm sure if you're listening to that and you heard that yesterday, there is an extra syllable, so it probably sounds wrong to you because of how many times you've heard this song. So let me demonstrate. I got my driver's license last week versus I got my driver's license yesterday, just like we always talked about. So there is that extra syllable. You might think that just sounds wrong. And well, the answer is probably because you've heard this song so many times the first way that the second way sounds wrong, and it might be true if you heard it vice versa. That's just kind of one potential change that could happen with this song. Something I wanted to play around with just as kind of a creative exercise. So let's go on to the next, leave that first one up there. Let's go on to the next verse. We have girl here, which doesn't rhyme with anything, which is a little strange. But then we have doubt and about, which is kind of nice because this doubt and about rhymes with the like about and house. Again, house is just rhyming the vowel like we had with week and me. I forgot to mention that. But overall, we're keeping that same kind of rhyme from before, which helps strengthen this, especially since we don't get a rhyme with girl at the beginning of this verse. We do have the me here, which connects back to the previous verse with the me in that third line, right? It shows up in the same place. And then we have, yeah, today I drove through the suburbs, because how could I ever love someone else? So here we have the same pattern, right? The rhyme happens in kind of the middle of this verse, and then the last two lines don't rhyme with anything else. Now I figured we could do something with girl, right? I mean, the common thing is to rhyme girl and world, so that's one that we want to try and avoid. So what else could we do here? Well, what I was thinking is this line, she's so much older than me. It's kind of redundant, right? See, she's so much, I mean, that's kind of qualifying older a little bit. We have older than me. Well, since you're talking about her, I feel like the than me part is a little bit implied. So I feel like we could kind of take some of this stuff out. So if we take out so much and then me, now we have some room to play with the words here. What I opted for was to give a little bit more description about the girl. Since we already are saying that she's older, we could also say that she has curls, right? Now, the S of curls kind of makes this a little bit wonky because we aren't saying you're probably with that blonde girls, and then girls and curls would be the perfect rhyme. But we saw this before, I think actually in the Good For You video, where if you kind of just leave the S off until the very end, then that strengthens kind of that rhyme, even though the rhyme isn't perfect. So we could have something kind of like this. And you're probably with that blonde girl who always made me doubt. She's older and has curls. She's everything I'm insecure about. Yeah, today I drove through the suburbs. Right? So we could just add, she's older and has curls. She's everything I'm insecure about. So we get a little bit more description of the girl, and we get a rhyme with girl, which I think is a little bit better than just, she's so much older than me. That doesn't add as much information, I don't think. Then we get to this last bit here, because how could I ever love someone else? Now, the first time we have this in the first verse, it makes a lot of sense. But today I drove through the suburbs crying because you weren't around. Okay, so I drove through the suburbs crying because you weren't around. Then let's just take this couple of lines in isolation. Yeah, today I drove through the suburbs because how could I ever love somebody else? It's kind of like, what? Like if you just heard that out of context, like, oh, hey, like I saw you driving around today. What were you doing? You're like, well, I was driving around the suburbs because I can't love anybody else. You're like, what? That doesn't make sense in those things. Whereas like, oh, I was crying because I broke up with my boyfriend, which is what the first verse kind of says. That makes sense, right? So I was trying to figure this out. Really, what you have to do is, this is where your memory comes into play and context, right? Today I drove through the suburbs crying because you weren't around. I was crying because how could I ever love someone else, right? Then we get that kind of in verse 2. So I think these last two lines are really trying to connect like verse 1 and verse 2 together, but it doesn't really make much sense. So what I was thinking is, since we have this kind of doubt and about rhyme that happens in both verses, maybe we could change this last line to make sense with today I drove through the suburbs and I'm doing something while I'm driving. Because that's what the first verse says. I'm driving through the suburbs and I'm doing something. I'm crying. So here, yeah, today I drove through the suburbs. And then we could rhyme about with like, trying to edit you out. Or trying to figure you out. Or figure it out, right? We could rhyme out with about and doubt, which would I think then make the rhyme a little bit stronger here and make more sense just within the context of the line. So that would be a change that I would probably suggest. Like the line itself, because how could I ever love someone else, is really powerful and strong. And even though it doesn't really make sense with the previous line, you kind of get it within the context of the song. Like, I think this just doesn't really fit in where it is. If there's another place to put it, like maybe we could try and fit it in there, but otherwise I don't really think that it works really well. All right, so there's a couple of options that I just put in there for that last line. All right, so now we get to the chorus. And the chorus is very kind of like rhythmic in the words. And I know we weren't perfect, but I've never felt this way for no one. Okay, so again, it breaks right there kind of at the end, similar to the beginning where we had that driver's license last week. We had the 2 week kind of syllables in a row. However, this works within the context of the song because it goes, first of all, the rhythm of the song follows this very closely. And I know we weren't perfect, but I've never felt this way. And right here where the rhythm of the words changes, the singer kind of compensates for it. Wait for no one. Right? And stretches that out so we don't really feel that break in the rhythm of the words. And then it continues in the second line. And I just can't imagine how you could be so okay now that I'm gone, right? And then again, right where that rhythm breaks, that's where the singer helps us out there. And the next line is really interesting because the first time that we have this kind of like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Guess you didn't mean what you wrote in the song about me is awesome because it provides this like tension, it provides this drive towards the end of the chorus where then we kind of get some resolution before we go back into the verses. And this kind of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 feeling is completely matched in the rhythm of the words. Guess you didn't mean what you wrote in that song about me. And we end on a strong syllable, which is, again, really nice. So that section is like so brilliantly constructed with the lyrics because it matches what the music does, right? The music, I think, actually really draws from that kind of triplet feeling in the lyrics. This is where, like, looking at the rhythm of your words, we've talked a bit about how you can get away with not having a very consistent rhythm because the singer helps you out, or the music can help you like get over those little speed bumps since music has its own rhythm. But if you can kind of sync the two together, then you can really have some like powerful moments in the case of this right here, right? And then that same triplet rhythm continues in the next line. Because you said forever, now I drive alone past your street. Strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak. Right? And the singer follows this exactly. Because you said forever, now I drive alone past your street. And then just does a little bit something different at the end to keep the variety alive. As far as the rhymes go, we have like me and street again. One and gone are kind of there, but not really. This one I think is really being held together by that like rhythmic element, which is so strong and powerful. All right, so going on to the next verse, the rhythm here is kind of a moot point. I'm not going to focus on it, but we have here tired, which doesn't rhyme with anything. Same thing as like ahead up here where we had girl, and girl didn't rhyme with anything. We have tired, which doesn't rhyme with anything. And then we have you, do, and then you again at the end. So this is the first time that we've had a rhyme at the very end. So this is the first time we kind of had this type of thing happen. We have this extra yeah at the end because we'll never know you the way that I do. Yeah. That's just kind of like an extra thing thrown in. I wouldn't really consider that as like something that you would want to end rhyme with. You could do that to kind of like fudge a rhyme if you wanted to, but in this case, like I don't really see that happening. We get suburbs again here at the very end, right? So that is something that's really strongly connecting all these verses together, is the fact that we get suburbs in every single verse, which is nice. So then where tired should rhyme is I feel kind of sorry for them, right? And I came up with another potential candidate to rhyme these two. So we have and all my friends are tired, hearing how much I miss you, but I kind of feel sorry for them. No rhyme, right? But what we could do instead, we could say something like, of hearing how much I miss you and how much I admired you. Because then we would rhyme tired and admired, and we would have two you rhymes, but we're already rhyming you twice in this. So maybe we could do a little bit better. And instead of maybe finding a rhyme for this third line, I kind of feel sorry for them, we could put admired in the second line. So we could say, and all my friends are tired of hearing how I admired you. Then we at least would get a rhyme with tired and admired before we then don't have a rhyme in the third line with I kind of feel sorry for them. The only other thing I wanted to talk about here is this line, because they'll never know you the way that I do. Again, we have that strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak. That kind of ties it back to this first time we get that strong, weak, weak pattern in the chorus. And the rhythm follows that again. I kind of feel sorry for them because they'll never know you the way that I do, right? But kind of gets that same 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 feeling. So that's nice because we're not really using this to like drive up a climax kind of point, but rather it's just providing a little bit of variety since we didn't have that in the first two verses, and it's tying it to the chorus. So moving on, we have the chorus again, which we have pretty much the same stuff. So we'll just skip that and go on to our bridge. So our bridge has this really cool starts, right? Red lights, stop signs. So this is what we kind of call like a halftime feel, because before we had, I saw a driver's license yesterday, and it's like you really feel this pulse here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we get to this part. Red lights, stop signs, right? So we have now 2 snaps for every one of these. So 1, 2, 1, 2, right? That's what we mean by like halftime. We have kind of half as many of that big kind of beat that we feel. And also, I think the imagery is really cool here because we have, red lights, stop signs. Stop signs are red flags, right? If you have somebody that you're in a relationship with and you have red flags, that kind of thing. So I think that's kind of a cool tie-in there. And then we have that strong, weak rhythm. Strong, weak, strong, weak. That kind of like reigns supreme throughout this whole thing. It really makes the structure of this bridge happen. Because then we have, I still see your face. Weak, weak, strong, weak. In the white car's front yards. Right? 2 weak beats actually becomes a pattern in this. When we get to the next line, can't drive past the places we used, right? Strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak. So those 2 weak beats kind of add like a little bit of a drive back into that big halftime feel where everyone, has their lighter out, that type of thing. And then we have, because I still love you, babe. Again, we end on a strong syllable, kind of like before. So that is a nice way to do it. So how does this pattern continue? Well, we get the sidewalks we crossed. Now here, I still hear your voice in the traffic. So we get that same weak, weak, but we get traffic. We're laughing. Now we have twice as many of those little weak, weak kind of pickup notes into it. In the traffic, we're laughing. So we have even more of that kind of idea or motive being explored here. Over all the noise, God, I'm so blue. No, we're through. Again, right? God, I'm so weak, weak, strong, weak, weak, strong, weak. But I still love you, babe. So that's a really cool way that they use the rhythm of the lyrics to kind of drive this whole thing together, right? And have this unique section. We don't get any of that kind of triplet feeling in this section, right? We just get that big kind of halftime feel, plus we get those like pickups that go into our big halftime feel. One thing that I kind of instinctively wanted to do when I was first looking at this was say, can't drive past the places that we used to. So I wanted to add the word that in there. Now the word that isn't necessary, right? It would actually be kind of superfluous. Right now, how it is, it's more succinct and establishes that pattern that we talked about. So I think like as is great, but it could be an option, right? Because we could have something like, I still see your face in the white car's front yard. Can't drive past the places that we used to go to, right? It could add that extra little bit of like punch and drive into our like halftime feel again. So let me play that a little bit for you. Can't drive past the places we used to go to, right? Versus can't drive past the places that we used to go to. Like the flow is better, it just breaks the pattern that's established. So it's kind of like, 50-50, right? How you'd want to do it. And in this case, I think like establishing that pattern and keeping it, like it works really well. I think this bridge is probably one of the best like constructed parts of this whole song. Not to mention, we have our first kind of tension in the lyrics with the swear word. And this is great, right? We talk about how tension should happen near the end, but not right at the end or not too soon. And here we get that kind of tension with the swear word right in the bridge, right before the last chorus. And like that has a really cool effect, right? That really kind of like drives the emotional part of this song home. I think this bridge is really what makes the whole piece. Like it's so powerful. So then in the last chorus, all the regular stuff, but how I think it ends is really nice. It says, 'cause you said forever, now I drive alone past your street, right? We end on our chord that we started on, which the original key is B flat, so we end on our B flat. But then, instead of just ending the song here, which is really typical for pop, is just to end it on the same kind of tonic chord. Tonic meaning the one chord of this key of B flat. But we don't end there. We get this little bit of a tag at the end. Yeah, you said forever, now I drive alone past your street. We end on G minor, which is the sixth chord, or the chord that's built off the sixth note to B flat, right, of this key. And so we kind of end on this minor chord, which feels a little unresolved. It's a little bittersweet, right? And it fits the mood of the song so well. This goes back to what I've talked about before of trying to end songs on anything besides tonic will provide like a different kind of sound, or just trying to avoid tonic in general. Again, tonic being the first note or first chord of the key. So I think that's a really, really nice way to end it. So conclusions from this song, overall, it's pretty good, but there's some room for improvement. Most notably, I think like at the end of verse 2, we could have had some better way to tie in that, because how could I ever love someone else? It doesn't really fit if you take it out of context. And the other thing is I actually saw this a lot in Good For You as well. There are a ton of conjunctions. We talked about how in Good For You, maybe I'm too emotional, but your apathy, she uses the word but there. And then the next time it comes through, it's just your apathy, she takes the word but out. And I think you could do that with a lot of this song. I mean, in the chorus, you could just start with, I know we weren't perfect, but I never felt this way. And then, I just can't imagine how you, instead of, and I know we, and I just can't, like the conjunctions just aren't really necessary, I don't think. So yeah, the song is great. I like listening to it. Like I said, I think the bridge has this really huge emotional impact and is awesome. Now, as far as going back to like this cover song that I said I didn't really like, I think the cover song actually exposed some of the weaknesses of the lyrics here that I kind of pointed out. But the reason why these work so well is because of how the singer delivers them. I think Olivia Rodrigo really puts so much like heart and emotion and like the timing of how she says things, how her like voice slides between some of the notes, I think makes this piece like really powerful. I think that's why I didn't really like the cover, because a lot of that like emotion and style of how she performed it was missing. And by themselves, I don't think the lyrics work as well unless you have somebody who's like really good at interpreting them, which, is true for a lot of songs, but I think was especially true for this one. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.